Hi guys, welcome back to another video. In today's video we're going to have a subscriber request. We're going to be using none other than the American gangster himself, Chael Sonnen, in some Division 20 ranked online gameplay. This was suggested by Jimmy on one of my latest videos, the mauling opponents online using grappling, dominating using side control and crucifix. And if there's any particular gameplay you do want to say or any style of video, please just comment below and I'll get around to recording the video. It might not come out that week or the next week because often or not I pre-record the videos and they're scheduled to go out at certain times, but I'll get out that video as soon as possible. So Chael Sonnen, obviously he hasn't got the best stats on the game, but he's still very usable, and the main thing obviously you're going to look to do is dominate on the ground. You're going to look for position over submission. You're going to look to ground and pound your opponent, and you're going to look to rack up the control time. And the opponent I'm facing here, I believe, is a Division 13 Vittori. And one thing is that Chael Sonnen is more suited to 5-round fights if you want the finish. So if you're looking for the finish with Chael Sonnen, if you want that ground and pound finish or even submission finish, I mean, his submissions aren't the greatest. I think they're in the 80s if I'm correct, can't remember the exact stats, so his submission game isn't the greatest. But if you're looking to finish your opponent, I think the best bet would be to grind on your opponent for the first 3 rounds, and then in the 4th and 5th slowly look for that finish. But he's definitely suited to 3-round fights as well, so if you can just control your opponent, rack up the control time and win the majority of the rounds, as long as you don't take too much damage on the feet, then you should be fine. So as you see, I get this Vittori onto the ground, posture up here, and I mainly postured up just to look for so when I posture up I was hoping my opponent would sway to lower his stamina, and then I was going to look to get into side control. So the main thing is you don't want your opponent to get up. You want to look to get as much control time as possible. As you can see, I started moving forwards for that takedown attempt, and then I switched to move backwards. And this is what you've got to do. You've really got to ride. You've got to roll properly. So if your opponent's looking to get up, you're gonna look to bring him back down. And this is the type of fight it's going to be using Chael Sonnen. So as you can see, I'm staying very calm because, like I said, it's position over submission and it's position over damage. I don't need to look to get my opponent out of there in the first round. We stayed on the feet for a bit. My opponent didn't do too much damage, so now here I'm really just looking to rack up these control points. And as you can see, starting to deny some transitions. I'm starting to figure out some of my opponent's patterns. And this first round is the round you wanna gain all the knowledge you need on your opponent. You want to figure out their little patterns and what way they go and how good they are off their back, because majority of the time I'm planning to be on top, so I need to see how good they are off their back. Do they attempt for submissions? What transitions do they go with? And these are all key things, especially if you're going to look to get that finish. As you can see here, with the 10 seconds remaining, we're starting to deny these transitions. And it's just been a very frustrating round for my opponent. This style is very hard to play against, especially if you dominate side control. I can have that video attached in the top right of me dominating side control and crucifix and talking you through why and how I do it, because I believe it's a very important part of the game. And so going into round 2, I didn't take too much damage on the feet. I racked up a good amount of control time, so that was a comfortable round for me. And one thing that's that can be utilised when you're using fighters that, let's just say, don't have the best stats when it comes to stand up is every now and then if you throw a strike that's a bit unorthodox or not expected, it can really catch your opponent off guard. So for instance, if we're staying on the feet and I throw a high kick, because I've been thrown to the body, my opponent's less likely to react to it, so I'm more likely to do more damage because I've only been throwing roundhouses to the body. If I throw one to the head with Chael, it can catch my opponent off guard, and then that of course will be better for me because I can let off some damage, even get a stun or a flash knockdown. So when you're on the feet with Chael, don't panic and force the takedown. His stand-up is not great, obviously. You are going to be looking to get the fight onto the ground or into the clinch as soon as possible. From the clinch, work your way to the ground, but his stand-up isn't to the point where it's that bad that you need to just constantly shoot for takedowns straight away. You've just got to stick to the basics. Use your jab, throw some hooks in, keep the combination short and sweet, and mix in the takedown attempts with the combination. So, as you can see, we're in half guard now, and you can really dominate a fight from half guard. So as you can see, I'm just remaining calm. I don't want to get blocked, and then my opponent ends up on top. And this is where patience needs to come into this side of your game, especially if you want to look to implement a very wrestling heavy or wrestling dominant gameplay. You need to be very, very patient. You can't rush to get into a position, because then if you get countered, all that hard work getting takedown is gonna lead to nothing. So as you can see, fighting very patiently, constantly moving to half guard, because half guard is one of the positions where you could dominate the fight from as well. It's not just side control and crucifix, which I believe is the best position. It's not just top mount. I think half guard, you can really dominate a fight also. So whenever my opponent gets into this position, I constantly deny up, because I'm against the fence, so my opponent gets that transition where he pushes me and clinches me towards the fence, and that transition is very, very quick. And this position here is very, very, very underrated. The only thing with it is you can't do any damage to the head, you can only do damage to the body. But although my opponent got up there, getting deniers off in that position is very, very easy, and it's a good way to drain your opponent's stamina. And so as you can see, when we got up there, as I was talking about earlier, throwing these unorthodox strikes, I threw the head kick, which my opponent was not expecting. It resulted in a stun, and from that stun we got a turn-in takedown, and now we're trying to fight again. And because there's not long left, I just decided to start ground and pounding and look to get off some damage. And this is another very successful round. And so going into round 3, we're definitely up round 2. We're definitely up 2 rounds, sorry. So I don't need to look to push the pace really. I just need to do more of the same thing. And one thing you've got to do is stick to your game plan. So now, because I'm up 2 rounds, I'm not going to start trying to strike with my opponent, because Vettori is obviously going to have the advantage. So you've just got to have the professionalism, stick to your game plan, because it's when you deviate from it, when you're having success, that you end up losing. So as you can see there, we get the clinch from the middle of the octagon. We get my opponent into the tie clinch and push him towards the fence. So if you're trying to push someone towards the fence and they stop moving, they stand there, they're letting you just control them, but they're not letting you push them towards the fence, because they know they're going to get taken down. Just switch to the tie clinch. With the tie clinch, eventually rotate them towards the cage, because often or not, when I'm facing grapplers, they do look for the clinch, but it's too far in the centre of the octagon and they don't know the ranges. So where I got that clinch attempt, it was enough to still push my opponent to the fence. So for me, that's a successful clinch, because I didn't just clinch and, you know, not get them to the fence. The best thing to do is clinch and push your opponent towards the fence, especially if you're a grappler. Obviously, whenever you're fighting, if you're controlled in the centre of the octagon as a grappler, that's ideal, because, you know, you can control that range and really catch your opponent. And the clinch isn't utilised, I think, as well as it could be. Obviously, the only time you really get clinched in the higher divisions is because someone's going to spam the clinch submission, which is just something that should have already been patched. It's still way too broken. There's a guy right now in the top 100, I think it's called UFC 4 Cheeser, and all he does, of course, as you can tell by his name, is cheese. I played him, and he was using Israel Adesanya, and he won, and it was because he kept obviously looking for the clinch submissions with Izzy, which I think you should only have it if you've actually used it in a fight or got a finish with it, because I don't think you should have moves that, you know, the fighter doesn't actually use in real life. So getting back to the gameplay, as you can see, I'm doing a very good job of controlling my opponent. We got off some good ground and pound not long ago from top mount. As you can see, I'm just controlling my opponent, and with around a minute left, there's not much for my opponent to do here. And as you see, I've been going for the submissions just to see how good my opponent's submission defense is, but it's quite good. And obviously, I haven't really been going for it at the right times, so I cancelled it. If you hold L1 and R1, it will cancel the submission attempt. And that's very important because I don't think a lot of people realise that you can actually cancel your submission attempts. And by cancelling it, if you cancel at the right time, if you get to quite a late stage, you can actually end up in an advantageous position. So for instance, there's some submissions like the arm triangle, you start off in half guard, and at a certain stage of the submission, if your opponent gets out or you cancel it, you'd end up in side control. So it's a sneaky way of getting into side control. So that was the fight, obviously. I dominated my opponent pretty much for 3 rounds, and that's exactly how you want to use Chael Sonnen. We're going to have the scored cards come up now, so you can see how the judges scored it and see the stats for each round. The next video coming out, I believe, will be a Jared Cannonier fight in Division 20 also. So I look forward to showing you guys that, because I believe he's quite a dark horse in the game. So yeah, that's the stats for the round. As you can see, pretty comfortable victory. Thank you for watching the video. Please like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.